All right, well, joining me now from the nation's capital live, Keller Joy and Ed Husic. Thanks, both of you, for being there. Keller Joy, let's start with you. What on earth is wrong with this government's poor salesmanship of the budget? They need you on the front bench to help sell it.
I always love your opening lines, Peter. They're always so terribly helpful.
But it's rare that you agree with him.
Oh, no. Look, I think we're doing a very fine job in being able to explain the budget to the Australian people. There are obviously lots of measures in this budget, and let's not forget where we started. And I'm very happy to go through this again with you, Peter. I know we've talked about it many times in the past, but we inherited a situation that was very much worse than we left it in when we last left government. We had over $191 billion of deficits delivered by the Labor government. But put all that
to one side, Kelly O'Dwyer. The problem that you guys have got is the salesmanship. I'm not necessarily arguing against the policies, but we don't even get to that because ministers are contradicting each other. The Prime Minister doesn't know what's going on in the budget. It's a complete mess. And we see it again today. In the Senate estimates tonight, the Deputy Secretary of the Health Department said that no modelling was done on the GP co-payments. I mean, that's negligent, to say the least, isn't it?
Well, I actually haven't heard what's been said in the Senate estimates. Oh, look, I'm just getting a little bit of feedback in my ear, but let me proceed. But if I sound a little bit funny, you'll know. Well,
no, we'll get that dealt with you. I'll go across to Ed Husic. I do believe you, Keller Joy, but, you know, circumstances, how convenient. A difficult question, Ed Husic. Let me ask you, modelling. No modelling being done by the Health Department when it comes to the GP co-payment. You'd think that an economically responsible government would do a little bit of economically responsible modelling before introducing a policy, wouldn't you?
Surprise, surprise that there hasn't been any of that work done, that it was only in
they're copying your side of politics. You guys didn't model a whole bunch of things that you wrote on the back of an envelope, like the NBN, for example.
It was the weeks in April leading into the budget that they decided that they would come up with this idea. They didn't really talk to the Health Department about it. And then they've put forward this notion that they'd create the fund, realising the type of heat that would be generated and is still being generated by the GP tax. It makes no sense to create this fund, funding it or financing it through the GP tax, squeezing the sick of today to pay for the cures for the sick of tomorrow. And I feel very strongly about the way this fund has been financed, and the argument that they're doing it because they're pro-innovation while they're cutting funds to the CSIRO, the Australian Research Council and a number of other research bodies simply doesn't fly. So I just think it doesn't surprise many who've watched this that this is exactly how it's been financed, how it's been worked out, that it's all been done on the run.
All right, Kelly O'Dwyer, you don't get off that easily about this. I mean, you used to work for Peter Costello as one of his senior economic advisors. You must be horrified that there's been no modelling done of the co-payment. I mean, it's all about the economics, surely.
Well, look, I haven't heard the comments that were mentioned in Senate estimates, but let me say this. I'd be incredibly surprised if there hadn't been detailed work done in relation to the co-payment. I'm very confident that during the ordinary course of preparing a budget that detailed assessments are made. And let's not forget, the co-payment was actually originally an idea of the Labor Party. It was introduced by the Hawke government in 1991, and quite rightly so. It was to produce a price signal for people who were seeing the doctor and
but it cost Bob Hawke his leadership.
Well, look, I mean, it doesn't mean, though, that the underlying concept was flawed. And look, you know, frankly, you've got to acknowledge when an idea is a proper one. And I acknowledge that this Labor idea was indeed a sensible idea. You know, having a price signal for effectively visiting the doctor for Medicare, when you consider that, you know, only a little while ago we were spending about $8 billion on Medicare, and it's now going to blow out to more than $20 billion. Clearly, it's not sustainable, and we need to make sure that for the benefit of future generations, we put it on a sustainable footing. That's why we've made this decision. We think that it gets the balance right, and as I said to you before, I'm sure all the work was done before the decision was announced.
Hey, if my view is, hang on a second, that if the coalition want to go back in time and steal bad ideas of the Labor Party, be our guest. I mean, it lasted 3 months. The only thing that lasted less time was a Tony Abbott promise. I mean, if they want to stick with this
if they want to
idea,
steal, Ed Husic, if they want to steal some bad ideas, Ed Husic, if they want to steal some bad ideas off the Labor Party, they don't have to go that far back in time. Let me tell you, there's a lot of policies they could pick up from the last 6 years.
Maybe a couple of hours.
All their propaganda and all their defence of this is to go back to Bob Hawke.
No, it's
it
just
lasted
reminding you-
3 months.
reminding you about the history,
3 months,
that's all.
and it was dropped because it's a terrible idea. And we're seeing that idea play out now.
All right, you two
You're
control
shadow
yourselves. I want to move on to Clive Palmer now. I want to move on to.
Let me just make the final point, because Shadow Assistant Treasurer.
You always
who is
get the last
currently
say, Keller Joy.
Assistant Treasurer. He is somebody who is an actual very strong proponent of this scheme, although he's been put in witness protection.
You wrote about it in school.
No, he didn't. It was less than 10 years ago.
All right, you two.
And he's
All
now
right, I've
been
got to
put in
jump in. We've
witness
got to move the
protection
topic
over
along.
it.
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about Clive Palmer now, something that I suspect you'll both agree on. Ed Husic, let me ask you about this question. Clive Palmer stood up in the Parliament, apparently, and said, why should business be taxed and women discriminated against just so the PM's Chief of Staff can receive the benefit when she gets pregnant? He's talking about the PPL. Ed Husic, should he apologise for those comments?
Yeah, it's a dumb set of comments. I mean, I think PPL is a terrible... The way that it's been framed by the Abbott government is terrible. It will slug business to pay people who are on very good incomes $50,000, and as a result of a budget that we're told everyone has to do the heavy lifting, there'll be some really big winners, and the general community
But getting
will
to
lose
Clive
out.
Palmer's remarks, though, I mean, they're fundamentally offensive.
And I don't think... Look, I always call it, as I see it, regardless of politics on those type of things. I've often said where people within the political class, if I could put it that way, say the wrong thing, then you should call it out, and I just think that was the wrong thing to say.
Kelly, I know that you would agree with that, but let me extend the question to you and ask, how are you guys going to deal with the new Senate when someone like Clive Palmer has effective control of the Senate if Labor decides to block your initiatives? When he's making comments like that in the Parliament, clearly there's a level of animosity there on his side of things.
Well, I do agree with Ed that the comments were entirely inappropriate and quite nasty and quite personal. And I think when it comes to these policy debates, we should actually look at the substance of the debate rather than attacking people personally. Now, I mean, Ed made a couple of comments before that are just simply incorrect about the paid parental leave scheme. For starters, not everybody's going to be getting $50,000, which is the assertion that the Labor Party continues to make. It's about replacement wage, which is capped at a maximum of $50,000 for women who earn that amount of money, which is a very small proportion of the population. And it is being paid for by a number of businesses. We are cutting the company tax rate by 1.5%. However, that cut won't apply to a small number of businesses who will, in effect, fund the paid parental leave scheme. In terms of what happens in the Senate, well, look, I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen with the Senate when it changes over. We've got minority parties, we've got Palmer's party, and he seems to change his position on all sorts of issues, not only from day to day, week to week, but potentially even from hour to hour. And I think the public are looking for a little bit of certainty from the people that they elected in the Senate, and they're also looking for those people to do the job that they were effectively elected to do, and our job was to get through our mandate to get rid of such things as the carbon tax. We're being blocked and frustrated by mainstream parties like the Labor Party, and I think, you know, frankly, when people reflect on this, they're going to be very upset about it.
Well, let me just jump in quickly, Keller Joy. You mentioned the carbon tax. There may not be a need to repeal it, depending on what happens with the Liberal leadership. Malcolm Turnbull would probably be okay about it.
Well, you know, the whole thing is quite laughable. And I mean, you're laughing, Peter, Ed's laughing. You know, it's such a non-issue.
I'm laughing at him being smart, Alec, actually.
It's a non-issue, it really is.
But Andrew Bolt created the situation, didn't he? I mean, there's no one here to blame other than Andrew Bolt, and he's supposed to be good mates with the Prime Minister.
No, I don't think so. Well, if I can make the point, Malcolm's been around for a while. Malcolm knows that he's got two options when he responds.
That's rubbish.
Hang on a second. He's got two options. He can either downplay it and kill it off as a story, or he can go out and do what he did today. He chose to blow it up by going, in terms of having a very strong reaction to Bolt. Now, if he thought that would kill the story, think again. And what are we talking about right now? Malcolm Turnbull and leadership.
And we're ending on that because we are out of time.
It's a non-issue.
No, we're not ending yet.
It's a non-issue, agreed. But we are
I'm not
talking about it. And the
that
reason we're
anymore. I
talking
wanna
about
talk about
it is
something
because
else. I
Andrew
wanna
Bolt
talk
put
about-
it on the agenda. We're not talking about it.
I wanna
We're
talk
not
about
talking
this.
about it because of anything that Malcolm Turnbull's doing.
No,
Good
hang
him.
on.
He decided to slap down what was a ridiculous suggestion against him. I don't blame him doing it. We're out of time though. Keller Joy and Ed Husic, appreciate your company. Thanks very much.
Hey, I couldn't even say here that you made the call on state of origin. The man who has the most awkward sports reading presence ever.
Ed, you're right.
Made the call.
You are right, Ed. I got the call right. Thanks, mate. Talk to you later.